How's it going, everybody? Today I'm going to share the story of how I got a job with the Diesel Brothers working for Dave Sparks. I figure some of you guys might be entertained by this because it is a very unique path I had to take, and a ton of stars had to line up perfectly for everything to work out. So we'll get right into it. You may have heard me be called a Florida man on Dave's channel, for those of you that watch his videos. That's because I was born and raised in Florida, and both of my parents were both white-collar engineers, clean-cut folks, super smart. So growing up, I was kind of expected to follow in their footsteps and going to college and getting a college degree, engineering degree and whatnot. But my favorite hobby growing up was tinkering in the garage, so I definitely had the brain for it. But I didn't really care about the book knowledge side of things, because I was learning all those lessons just hands-on, messing around in the garage, building go-karts and jet boats. And I had a dad that was pretty handy as well, that taught me a lot of the fundamentals, and then through building random projects and just failing at them, I would learn a lot of new things myself. So I was just working in my parents' garage, just messing around with old hand-me-down tools from my grandpa, so I was pretty limited on what I could build. So what I really wanted to do was just grow my fabrication skills and grow my abilities to build whatever I want, because I was confined by the tooling in the garage I grew up with. So after high school, if I was going to do any further schooling, I was more so interested in maybe like trade school to learn welding or fabrication. But my parents were like dead set on me to go to a normal university and get a college degree, and kind of follow in their footsteps. So I wasn't like super driven on what direction I wanted to go with my life anyways. I based my whole upbringing around making my parents proud. That was like the biggest thing I cared about. So they really wanted me to go to college. And so I decided to go. And I did get great grades growing up. I was top 10% of my class. I was able to get enough academic scholarship to get me out of state, actually. So I went to a university in Alabama. So I figured that would be kind of cool, getting in a new area. And the first semester in school was pretty fun, just meeting new people. I kind of liked life changes, so it was cool just to get in a new environment. But once the second semester rolled around, I really started to miss my garage, and I was cooped up in a dorm room, and I really started not to enjoy things, and really started to feel like, okay, this is not a good investment in my life, going to college and getting this book knowledge that I don't really care about, and getting a degree that I don't feel called to actually ever use to get a job with or anything like that. Because ultimately I just wanted to work for myself growing up. So I was like, what do I need a college degree for? But I really wanted to make my parents proud, and if I were to ever drop out, that would wreck my relationship with them. So I tried to just keep sticking it down in college. And so I stay in college. I'm getting good grades, keeping my scholarship, keeping my grades up. But I'm just sinking deeper and deeper into like a depression, because I just felt stuck down a path of life that I was just wasting my life away, that I didn't want to go down, and just feeling stuck because I wanted to make my parents proud, and I couldn't drop out because of that. But staying in school was making me so depressed that I was so miserable that finally, after 3 years into school, I was 3 years into a 4-year degree, that was about my breaking point, to where I was so miserable that I didn't care if it ruined my relationship with my parents. I was dead set at dropping out, because I just didn't want to waste one more year in my life. I wasn't going to do anything with a college degree, so I just wanted to out. So, interesting thing there is, around that time, this is 3 years, by the way, 3 years ago. I've been working for Dave for 3 years. Around that time, I was in college. I was a fan of the Diesel Brothers, watching the TV show, super big fan of the show, watched every episode since they first started. So I was a total fangirl of the guys out here. And So Dave had started this podcast called The Heavy Checklist, and I followed him on Instagram, and so he promoted the podcast on his Instagram, and so I kind of got plugged into that. And this podcast changed my life, people. If you haven't listened to it, I can't stress it enough. Go check out this podcast that Dave made. It was a lot different than what you're used to from Dave, because it was all about business and personal development. Normally you guys know him as like just the truck guy, the TV show guy, now the YouTube guy. But with his podcast, he just dove into the personal development side of things and all the techniques he's used to get to the level he's at today. And this was actually really my very first exposure to the whole space of personal development. Growing up, I was just kind of held to a standard of get good grades and, try to get a good job in the future and have a family and kind of live not a bad life, just an average life. So once Dave started preaching all this personal development stuff, it really started resonating with me. So I became a loyal listener to the podcast. And a few months after he started the podcast, he did this little branch off called the Heavy Academy, which was an in-person conference, business conference, where basically you could buy a ticket, go to the event, and Dave pulls the curtain back on his business and shows all the nitty-gritty inner workings of the truck giveaways and the business as a whole, marketing. So this really intrigued me, and I really, really wanted to go, but tickets to the first one were like $6,000, and then come May 2019, he did a second one, and the price was dropped to $2,000 for that one, which was still way out of my price range. I mean, I was a broke college kid. But right before the event, he did this thing where you could enter in to win a half off ticket. So I was like, well, what the heck? God, if it's your will for me to drop out of school and start driving out west and try to figure out a new life out west and go to this event, then let me get a ticket. So prayed that prayer, entered in to win the ticket, and kind of left things there. And at this point, it was finals week in school. So I'm studying my little heart out, hating my life. I go and take my first final. I get out of that final and check my emails, and I can see I got an email saying that I won one of these tickets. So I was like, holy smokes, I prayed about it. I guess I got to commit. This must be a sign that I'm finally supposed to drop out. And I don't know what the heck my life is going to look like from this decision, but I was just so miserable that anything other than what I was currently doing, just being stuck in school, sounded better to me. So even if that meant sacrificing the relationship with my parents, going to a new place that I didn't know anybody, I just was ready for that sort of jump. I was to that breaking point. So needless to say, I blew off the rest of my finals. I ran back to my apartment, packed like one bag of clothes, and I hopped in my 1986 Ford truck, the same one you've seen on this channel that I've been pretty hard on. It used to be a pretty nice truck. And so I hopped in that. I started driving west because the conference was in Las Vegas and I was in Alabama. So I started driving. I spent the whole next like 4 days just driving across the country. My truck doesn't have an overdrive, so I'm kind of limited to just like 60 miles per hour. So it was a long, slow trip across the country. I was spending all my money on a $1,000 ticket and fuel to get across the country. So literally all I was eating is I would go to the Walmart bakery each day and you could get a whole baguette for $1. So I would just munch on a baguette all day. My mom, like several months prior, got me this giant tin can of Costco peanuts that I was eating from too. And I swung by my buddy's place in Texas to spend the night, and he bought me a bag of jerky. So that's what I was eating going across the country. And I was trucking along, and I made it to Vegas. Went to the event. It was super amazing hearing Dave, and the whole lineup of speakers at that event was crazy. Andy Frisella, freaking big name hitters. It was an amazing event. So 2-day event. At the end of the event, everybody can line up and meet the Diesel brothers. But instead of hopping in line of 200 people, I went over to a key player in this story, Marcus Wing. There's a couple people you guys need to keep track of here. So we got Marcus Wing. He owns a production company. He's a co-host of Dave's podcast, and he put on the stage for the event at the Academy. And as everybody else was lining up, I noticed him start to take down some equipment and whatnot. So I walked over to him. I asked, "Hey, Marcus, I'm Hunter. Would you like me to help you take down the stage? I would probably rather do that than wait in line. So if you want the help, I'm happy to help." So he's like, "Yeah, sure, man." So I start breaking down the stage, loading stuff up in his trailer, and him and I get to talking, and he learns I just dropped out of school and drove all the way across country to get to the event. As a result, when I did get a ticket, I immediately called my dad, super stoked. And on that phone call, my mom and dad really expressed how much they opposed this decision I was about to make. But they kind of saw that I was pretty committed to making this jump. And so they had, just to convey how much they opposed this decision, they told me to not expect to be able to come back to their house and live under their roof. So I'm talking to Marcus about things, and he learns that I just dropped out of school, drove all the way across country. Parents kicked me out of the house. And he's like, "Dang, dude, you're the real deal. I really admire your commitment on making it to the Academy. I want to personally introduce you to the Diesel brothers." So I'm like, "Awesome, cool, man." So the whole line gets sorted through. Marcus and I walk up to Dave and Diesel Dave and the Muscle, and Marcus gives a little quick breakdown of my little story on getting to the Academy. And by that point in the day, everybody was super tired. Dave was just taking pictures with a ton of people, and just spoke all day, so he was pretty tired. So he kind of sorted through me, and I got my picture with them. And that was pretty much it for that night. I did go back to Marcus. I was like, "Hey, Marcus, my truck is running really crappy out of this cross-country trip. I know what parts I need to replace. It needs a new injection pump. Do you think there's any way you could ask Dave if I could limp it up to his shop in Salt Lake City and just work on the truck in the back corner of his lot? I can give him some free labor in return." And Marcus was like, "Yeah, sure, man, I'll see what I can do." So that was it for me in the Academy. Super awesome experience. No regrets going. But now I don't know what I'm doing next with my life. Nothing really came from the event. So I decided to just leave Vegas the next day because I didn't want to stay in Vegas. So I limped my truck up to Mesquite, Nevada, because it was on the way up north to Salt Lake if anything worked up out there, and it was on my way back east if I was going to try to meander my way back east, but I didn't really have anything to go back to, so it wasn't going to be worth the fuel. But also in Mesquite was Goon's Garage. This was a shop that was owned by two brothers, Chet and Tyson Ruth. Now these guys used to work for Dave, and I met them at the Academy. So if I needed emergency truck help, I at least had their garage in Mesquite. So once I get to Mesquite, remember now, I'm a Florida man. I've been surrounded by water my whole life, and now I'm in smack dab in the middle of the desert. So I'm like, I just want to go see some water. I was so bored anyways. So I looked on maps and saw that the Virgin River flowed through there. I was like, oh, there's some dirt roads that get me to the river. I'm going to go explore the river. So I take my truck on these sugar sand roads, and I end up getting my truck buried. So stuck, axles front and rear, just on the ground. So I'm like, holy smokes, I'm screwed. But wait, I got Chet's number from the Academy. I'll give him a call and see if he can come pull me out. So I give him a call. I'm like, Chet, it's Hunter from the Academy. I'm in Mesquite actually, and I got my truck buried in some sugar sand trying to get to the Virgin River. Do you think there's any way you could come try to pull me out? And he was like, yeah, sure, man. And so like 5 minutes later, he shows up in a big lifted Cummins, and he's trying to get me out, and we ended up getting his truck stuck. So then he calls his brother, and he comes in another huge lifted Cummins, and his brother links to him. Then they daisy chain together and yank me out. So got a little hairy there for a sec, but we're all unstuck now. So at the end of that, I was like, hey guys, thanks so much for pulling me out. I would love to come by your shop tomorrow and give you some free labor in return if you want. I've got nothing else going on with my life right now. So they're like, yeah, sure, man, come on by. So the next day I go to their shop. I spend the first half of the day like pulling a transmission from a Jeep, replacing the part in it and reinstalling it. And I still don't know what I'm doing with my life, but Chet and Tyson really wanted to try to hire me, but they're still a young shop and they couldn't financially afford to bring me on the team yet. So Chet made an Instagram post reaching out to any other shops in the area. They're like, hey, we got this kid. He went to the heavy academy. He's super skilled. His parents kicked him out of the house for going to the academy, and he's looking for a leg up in life. If anybody needs an extra hand, hit me up. So Chet makes this post. Remember, we got Marcus in the background kind of buttering up Dave. Dave sees this post and he comments on it, have him get in touch with me. And shortly after that, I get a phone call from Hans, Dave's assistant, and Hans is like, hey man, we're really inspired by your commitment getting to the academy. We'd love to offer you a job if you want. If you can get up to Salt Lake City, we'll start you out tomorrow and we'll try you out for 2 weeks, and if we like you, we'll keep you around. So I was obviously stoked, and I was like, yes, I'll be there tonight. Because even though my life goal was to kind of work for myself, working for the Diesel Brothers was like the one exception I would happily make, and that would be my dream job as an employee. And so I was super stoked for the offer. Obviously, I ran up to Salt Lake City, started the next day, worked my ass off, and 3 years later, here I am. And it's been a whirlwind of a ride. Made some of the craziest memories in my life. This has been a job unlike anything I could have ever imagined. And I'm just super thankful for Dave for bringing me on the team and giving me this opportunity for the best foundation I could ask for to start my life from. Now I need to break down this transition for you guys a little bit more because it's really cool. So I go from having no money, no job, no plans for my life to now I have a job. And then once I get here, they let me sleep in one of the offices. So I have shelter. There's a washer and dryer at the shop, so I had a place to wash my clothes. Discovery Channel was filming at the time, and they would buy all these like free snacks and put them out on the table for us to enjoy throughout the day. So I was eating these snacks for breakfast, and then they were also buying us lunch. So then I would have free lunch, and then normally every day, one or two of my coworkers wouldn't eat their lunch, so I had their lunch leftovers for dinner. So in the blink of an eye, I went from having nothing in life to having a job, food, shelter, washer and dryer, literally all the essentials to life just rolled out on a red carpet for me. All because of a leap of faith I made, and God really worked a miracle through that and just lined up everything and got me in the doors of working for Dave Sparks. And it has been a wild ride since then. So, hope you guys enjoyed that story. I am still committed to eventually working for myself one day. And right now, I am focused on that avenue being YouTube. I'm really passionate about growing this channel into something very serious. So, I don't feel that it's God's will for me to work for Dave forever. So, at some point, I'm sure I'll transition to doing YouTube full time. So, I hope you guys stick around as I try to navigate that transition at some point in the future. I'm not sure how far down the line it'll be. So thank you guys for your time. One last note, go listen to the heavy checklist. Another cool thing was I go from being a little listener of this podcast, it changed my life, to then me literally becoming a guest on that very podcast. Dave had me on episode 26 to tell the story I just shared with you. So I want to recommend going to watch that episode because you just heard that story now, and if you only have time for a certain amount of other episodes, there's a ton of others that are super good, but hopefully I completely recommend you starting at number one and going through them all, because there's maybe like mid-30s, maybe in the 40s now, so you can work your way through, and that podcast literally changed my life, and I know it can for you too. So thank you guys for your time. Thank you for listening to my story. Hope to see you guys around in the future some more. Peace.